guys, I'm back. It's been a few weeks since I've vlogged just because things have been so busy and I don't foresee things starting to slow down anytime soon. Well, I am over my halfway point and I've gotten to do quite a few fun things over the holidays, so I thought I would tell you about my awesome trips that I've been on. So the last vlog was after my mom had visited. So unfortunately I had to say goodbye to her way too soon in my opinion. But then that night after I dropped her off at the airport, I went to see Shrek the Musical because why not? And I actually really enjoyed that. Had a lot of fun seeing it. I'd seen the Broadway production through Netflix and wanted to see it because of that. So I really enjoyed seeing that. And then the next day, I was going to Taiwan to see my professor. So I got this opportunity back in July. My professor and I were talking. So she works in Eau Claire, but she's from Taiwan and has her mom and dad still in Taiwan. And I'm pretty close to her, and she had mentioned, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you visited me in Taiwan since you're kind of on that side of the world? And after talking about it with my parents, we decided, yeah, that would be a great idea and an awesome opportunity. So I headed out to Taiwan. So I left about 3 p.m. and it was an 8-hour flight to Singapore. So the weirdest thing was this airline. It was a budget airline because I'm not about to spend a bunch of money. So this airline didn't give you anything while you were on the plane. So they didn't give you any beverages. They didn't give you any food. They wouldn't even give you water. You actually had to pay for water. But I had brought my own, so I didn't need to pay for that. You also weren't supposed to bring outside food onto the plane. So I had snacks and things because I wasn't going to pay for a meal and then had eaten before I got on the plane. But still, I thought that was very strange. Anyway, so it was an 8-hour flight to Singapore. And Singapore their airport is known for being like this amazing airport with movie theaters and a butterfly garden and a sunflower garden. So I, on my layover, just explored Singapore airport, saw a lot of the gardens and all of the cool decor, which I'd never seen before because I'd never been to any Asian country, which was really cool. And then I had about a 3-hour flight, 3 or 4 hour flight into Taipei in Taiwan, where my professor was. So I arrived probably about 5:30 in the morning their time. So they're about 3 hours ahead of Sydney, so it was definitely a time adjustment. But I arrived, and right away my professor picked me up with her dad, who doesn't speak any English, so that was kind of difficult. And she brought me to the area we would be staying in. So her parents' apartment, in her words, is too small. So she actually ended up renting a hotel room for me, which was really nice. So we went to breakfast at this little corner cafe type thing. I would not call it a restaurant, but it's a very different culture there. And then we went to Taipei 101, which is basically this huge building. It's probably over 500 meters tall. And it's kind of comparable to like the Sears Tower in Chicago, where you look out and see the whole city. And I did not realize how big Taipei was. So we did that. And then we went to this restaurant that is very famous, and everyone wants to go there, and we had a bunch of food. I honestly don't even remember what I ate, and that's going to be probably most of these foods because my professor would just buy me food and then, here, eat it. So I'll put pictures, but I don't remember what half of these things are called. And then we just kind of explored the city a little bit. We walked up this mountain to kind of, I wouldn't call it a mountain, but this hill to see the city a little bit better. Went and saw the National Theater and the concert hall area. This area where there's a wall or was a wall at some point, so they have one of the last standing gates. So that was very pretty to see. And they were also starting an election in Taipei while I was there, so there was a lot of people protesting and having political rallies and things. And then that night we went over to one of Chayu, my professor's friend's house, who didn't really speak any English, so it was like 2 hours of me sitting there listening to Chinese and attempting to make out what they were saying. But I am not good at Chinese, nor have I really ever been exposed to it, so I did not know anything. But we had this thing called hot pot, so it's just this big pot of like a hot broth, and then you just keep adding things. So we had some sort of noodles, we had a lot of tofu and vegetables and a lot of things just kind of put into this pot, and once it's done cooking, you take it out and put it on your plate and eat it. So we did that, and then that was our night, and I was so tired, went back to the hotel, showered, and then went to bed. And then the next day we woke up and had breakfast at the hotel. Chayu would come over and meet me, and it was always funny because during breakfast they'd have chopsticks. Their breakfasts are very different compared to the U.S., but they had chopsticks, and every time they would see me, they would grab a fork and give it to me because I was definitely the only Caucasian person in the hotel. So they kind of recognized me really easily. So it was kind of funny. So then the next day we walked through these markets over to this gondola area. And so we rode these gondolas up the mountains and into the mountains and went to this little village that is kind of known for their tea. And so we went there and had some tea tasting. So we had some tea there and went up to some of the temples that they have and got a really pretty view of the city. And basically just walked around, observed. And then that night, we went and actually had dinner with the whole family, with all of Chayu's family. So it was me, Chayu's mom and dad, and then Chayu's brother and wife and kids. So her brother speaks English, but everyone else not so much. So that was kind of interesting, but the food was really good, and it's fun to get to experience a different culture and learn from that. So I enjoyed it, even if I couldn't really communicate with them. So then the next day, it was a little bit rainier, but we went to this fort in the Dan Shui district. So it's further north of Taipei, I believe. Not really sure. But we went to this fort and this seaside village thing and ate some sort of food. Not really sure what it is, looking at these pictures of it. There was some sort of fish. I wouldn't have been able to tell it was fish by the look of it. My stomach is churning right now because it's remembering what I ate. There's this thing called sheep's blood cake, which is sheep's blood mixed in rice, made into this cake, dipped in like a peanut butter powder, and I don't think I'll ever be eating that again. But we ate that, unfortunately, and they had quail eggs, which are like boiled eggs. Not my favorite as well. We ate a lot of food. Mainly Chayu and her mom would buy things from the market and be like, oh, try this. So I don't even remember all of what I tried. But it was a lot of fun walking around that area. I love looking at these markets and these little shops. I think they're so cute. We had some sort of cake there. They had fish balls, which are like meatballs, only with fish, which was very different. Never seen anything like that. And then that afternoon, we went to like this National Archives Museum and saw a lot of really pretty art and pottery and ancient things that they used to use way back when. It was really cute because, so Chayu's mom doesn't really speak much English. She knows a few words and a few phrases, But Chayu couldn't come right into the museum because at 4:30 it was free. So Chayu's like, oh, I'll just wait. And Chayu's mom actually was a tour guide or a volunteer, so she could come right in. So she was taking me around the museum, trying to point things out, and obviously we couldn't really communicate. So it was cute though, because she'd try her best to kind of point out what I was seeing or explain what exactly we were looking at. So it was very, very cute of her. And then that night we went to this other area, kind of a night market area. And Chayu and I just walked around, ate some more food, observed some more things. And then that night we went to this restaurant that Chayu had been dying to take me to. It's called The Modern Toilet. So it's basically this restaurant that's based off of poop. And like that's the seller is all these poop and toilet themed things. So you come in, you sit on a toilet seat, your like table has a turd in it. The food is all themed, so like you can get a dessert called the Constipation Black Stool Chocolate Snow Shaving, or the Swirly Poop Ice Cream, or the Urine Clots Mango Snow Shaving. So very, very kind of vulgar, but hilarious. And Chayu thought it was hilarious too. And your meals actually come served in a toilet, kind of plate looking thing, which is pretty funny. I thought it was hilarious. The food was pretty good. I enjoyed it, and Chayu and I got a kick out of it. The next day we went up to, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, it's called Jeffwin or something like that. And it's just another mountainy town type thing with a lot of markets, and we walked around there, ate some more food. So at this point, I was definitely feeling bloated because there was so much food that we ate. I don't even know half the things. We tried this stinky tofu. Ugh. Would not recommend unless you really, really, really like that kind of stuff. I don't. But it was a very pretty area. It's foggy, so you couldn't really see as far as you probably wanted to. But it was a really cool area, very touristy. And then after that, we went to this place called Ice Monster and got a mango snow shaving thing, which was delicious, and icing on the cake. And probably my favorite thing about that restaurant, besides the ice shaving, was the toilets. So a lot of the toilets are kind of like Japanese made, so they can squirt you and like clean you, and some of them are heated. I obviously couldn't read anything, so I wasn't about to experiment and press buttons. But, like, the heated toilet seat was pretty nice. Like, I'm not complaining there. Then we just walked around, found another temple, and explored some more. Oh, that night we went to the night market that's closest to the hotel and where Chayu lives. And just kept snacking on foods there and eating away, basically. And that was our day. It went by really fast. And then the next day, we went to a pottery and ceramics museum, which is actually really cool because in high school, I loved pottery and ceramics. So that was really cool to walk around and see their versions. I really liked that place a lot, actually. And then we had some sushi for lunch and walked around some more and went to this area called the Dasai District, I believe. And kind of, again, some more markety area with a lot of food, overlooking a river. And things had started slowing down now because we had done the main touristy things. So it got a little quieter and we relaxed a little bit more. So then that night we went to McDonald's and actually ate with Chayu's nephews. And it was kind of cool getting to try Taiwan McDonald's. I would say it's better than the U.S., but I haven't been to the U.S. in a while. But I had some authentic bubble tea from Taiwan because apparently that's where it all started. So that was really cool. That was basically the majority of my time in Taiwan because the next day then we went to the Lin Family Garden, which is right next to the hotel. And we just explored that area and looked around. And Chayu's mom actually volunteers there, so she kind of would say something in Chinese to Chayu, and Chayu would translate it back to English for me. So it was really cool, a very pretty garden. But then it was already time for me to get back on the plane and go back to Sydney. So they dropped me off at the airport. I said my farewells. And I actually had sick the last day in Taiwan. No, it's not this coronavirus thing that's going around, thank goodness. So I was feeling very achy and kind of gross. So in the Taiwan airport, I actually got just a quick neck massage because I needed that. So then it was a 4-hour flight to Singapore, which was not that bad. But then once I got to Singapore, it was like go, 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 because I wanted to leave the airport so I could go see Singapore. So I quickly took a taxi to the Marina Bay Sands, the famous hotel that you see in Singapore, and walked around there. It was so hot in Singapore, and not feeling well. I was just kind of over everything. But then got to go see Gardens by the Bay, which is another famous thing in Singapore. Didn't explore it as much because I only had a layover of 5 hours and had to get dinner and get a taxi and get checked back in and all these things. So it was perfect timing though. So then after I went to Marina Bay Sands and Gardens by the Bay, I went to this place called The Jewel, which is right next to the airport, and it's like this big shopping center, but they have this really cool like aqua waterfall thing that I wanted to see. So I saw that. It was very pretty. Actually, they also had a restaurant that I had to go to and see how it compared. They had an A&W, so I ate dinner there, and I'd like to report back that their root beer floats are nothing like the U.S. The U.S. has such better root beer floats. Let me just say that. They tasted really weird, but they were good. It's very pretty there, and then I had to quickly get back into the airport and get back to Sydney, so then it was an 8-hour flight back to Sydney, and then basically just dealt with my sickness while I was here in Sydney because my host family here wouldn't be coming back until 3 days later. So once I got back from Taiwan, being that I was sick, I didn't really do too much just because I wasn't feeling up for too many things. I did a lot of sleeping. But since I was still on holiday, I wanted to make sure that I was taking advantage of my time off. So the first day, I kind of just explored Sydney a little bit. Well, because it's SydFest here in Sydney until about the 28th, they had some little things around the city and this like giant blow-up balloon thing that you could walk through, some architecture thing. That was kind of like the Star Lab that we would go through when we were younger. So that was pretty cool to see, and just kind of walked around the city, but thankfully I got to meet up with a friend from Wisconsin. So my old university, Eau Claire, had their marching band come to Sydney, and they are going on a cruise to New Zealand as well. So I got to meet up with her. Her name is Paige. I actually studied abroad with her 2 summers ago, so it was really good to see a familiar face in Sydney again. So we went to dinner at Vapiano's, which is a restaurant that I highly recommend for anyone. And this restaurant is one of the places that we ate out at a lot in Europe because it was cheap, it was fast, and it was delicious. So what else could you ask for? So we went there, and her sister Lauren tagged along, so it was really good getting to meet her. And Paige and I had a lot to talk about and catch up with since I hadn't seen her in quite a few months. So it was really good to chat with her, and then we actually went back to her hotel and chatted and met some other Blue Golds and talked, and then they all wanted to go out, so we went to Sidebar, which is a bar very close to Central Station in Sydney. So we just went there and only were out until about midnight, but still had a good time hanging out, chatting and dancing and having a good... That Saturday, then, when I got in, I went to go see a musical at the Capitol Theater, which is kind of down near Chinatown. I went to go see the School of Rock. I saw that it was coming to Sydney and wanted to go see it, and the family wanted to go see it as well. because one of Aiden's classmates is actually in the production, but because they're kids, they only work every so often. So I was hoping she would be performing when I went, but unfortunately not. But the show was so good. Those kids are so talented. If you have a chance to go out and see School of Rock, highly recommend, because it was so good. The kids definitely could outperform me any day. They're so talented, and they play all their own instruments right on stage. So that night then, before the show, I actually got a text from my friend Emma, who's another au pair here, saying that her house is infested with rats, and the family left her alone for the weekend, and she did not want to stay there by herself. And so I asked her if she wanted to spend the night at my place, since my host family was gone, and I had an extra bed. So gladly she accepted, and she came over, got away from the rats, and she came over and spent the night, and we had a good talk. We probably were staying up till 2 a.m. and they were like, hang on, we should probably shouldn't do that. And went to bed, and then the next day we went and caught well, technically it was breakfast for us, but it was more like a lunch for normal people. But we went to the cafe down the street from my house and got some crumpets, which were really delicious, and went back to the house and got ready. And then we went to Cronulla, which is south of the airport, so pretty far south of Sydney. And we just kind of took a train there and explored and looked around. It wasn't super exciting, but we just walked around and came back in the train while we were talking and such. And then decided to go to the Hard Rock Cafe in Darling Harbour and had a very good dinner and enjoyed some more talking. A lot of catching up to do. And then we parted ways, and then I actually had to go pick up my host family from the airport that night because they were returning home from their vacation. So got home, quickly showered, and then went to the airport and picked them up about 11 o'clock at night. They were very tired from being on a long, long flight, and that was basically the holidays. And then the first week back was basically just unpacking the bags, trying to get organized again, resituated, and then I went on an exciting trip, but I will talk about that in my next vlog. So if you're super excited to follow along on my story, keep watching because I'm doing that vlog right after this. So stay tuned.